Hi, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Israel Maimon, and I'm the President and CEO of Israel Bonds. First, I want to start by thanking Chaim Bibas, the chairman of the Association of the Municipalities in Israel, and all the mayors that joined us. And I want really to thank you. I know how much you are so busy these days because you, truly, the mayors, are in the front of dealing with the impact of the pandemic in Israel, and by the way, all over the world. And really, I want to salute the way that you lead in taking care of your civilians. Chaim is my mayor, is the mayor of my kids. So Chaim, thank you. I want to thank Michal Divon, who will be the host for today. And for all the participants who are on this call, I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank you for your ongoing involvement with Israel. In this period, it is even more important since we have to keep on developing the economic future of Israel. As I am sure you will hear better than anyone from the mayors, we have still a lot of work ahead of us. And Israel Bonds, as I'm sure all of you, all the participants that are on the call, are committed to work hard in order to secure Israel's additional needs. I want to thank everyone who took care in putting this panel together. It's very complicated. So again, thank everyone who is behind the scene. And to present our panel, I call upon Gladys Mizrahi. Gladys is a member of the Miami Campaign Council. Gladys, please.
Thank you, Israel. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest in Israel Bonds Global Event Series. While each global event has been unique, today's discussion will be particularly engaging. 5 Israeli mayors have joined us to share how the coronavirus impacted their communities and the ways in which they have handled the crisis as leaders of their respective municipalities. Before introducing our moderator, I'd like to say a word about Israel Bonds. Israel Bonds are multi-purpose investments that can be utilized for portfolios, donations, and gifts. You can visit israelbonds.com, download Israel Bonds app, or contact your regional Israel Bonds office to find the Israel Bond that's right for you. At the same time, your Israel Bond investments provide a moral boost to the people of Israel, who look to us for your support at a time of unprecedented need. Now, I would like to introduce our moderator, Michal Divon, an Israeli-American journalist and television host. Michal lives in New York and is anchor and reporter for News 12 Networks. She has interviewed prominent Israeli personalities and has emceed numerous high-profile events, including the annual Israel Day Parade. Now, I turn today's global event over to Michal.
Thank you so much, Gladys. Thank you to Israel, and welcome to today's Israel Bonds webinar event that features 5 prominent Israeli mayors who are very busy these days. I'm honored to be your host, and we have an extremely interesting panel ahead of us. I was in Israel back in February for a global conference organized by the Federation of Local Authorities. I wasn't the only one. There were thousands of participants, mayors from all over Israel and all over the world who attended the Muni Expo. They came to learn from one another about innovation and how to improve the quality of life in their cities, discuss challenges. COVID-19 was not one of the topics. Of course, if we would have held that conference today, it would be very different. It would be virtual, of course, and the conversations would be all about COVID-19. We're facing an invisible enemy. I believe Aliza Bloch, the mayor of Bet Shemesh, said in one of her appearances, and We've all been affected by the implications of COVID-19, and during all this chaos and unexpected time, we've looked at our local leaders for guidance, and they've served as our pillars, and they continue to do so. So today they will share some of the challenges they've been facing and some of the solutions they are implementing. And these challenges they are still facing as Israel enters what many are calling a second wave. So we're very, very lucky to have them with us today. Each mayor will have a 5-minute presentation followed by an audience Q&A. I'll throw some questions of my own as we go. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chaim Bibas, Mayor of Modi'in Maccabim Re'ut, and also the Chairman of the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel. Chaim, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, Michal. Thank you, and thank you to Israel. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for organizing this important meeting. Israel bonds has been critical to the growth of Israel for decades. In Israel, we still in the middle of this pandemic. Unfortunately, it seems we are witnessing a second outbreak in Israel these days. We have only ourselves to blame in Israel. The municipalities in Israel played a major role during this crisis, more than we ever expected. A lot of what was done in Israel was decided on the national level by the Prime Minister and the relevant ministers. But the Federation of local authorities is the infrastructure and the backbone of the country when it comes to implementation. We provide the services to the 9 million citizens in Israel through the 257 municipalities. We help drive some of the decisions regarding getting back to normal, especially in education. We spend most of our time in emergency and crisis management on both national and local levels. We implemented emergency management and crisis communication. Everything was constantly changing and evolving. Our emergency command center in the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel, which was manned 24/7. It's our dedicated municipal emergency crisis application. We called it MACA. We also acted as a connector between the government, the Prime Minister, Ministers of Health, Education, Welfare, and other ministers, and the municipalities through the mayors in Israel. These are some of the areas where our operational tools were deployed. One, education, implementing a plan for remote education. There are more than 2 million students in Israel. Schools and teachers had to pivot, just like startups, and adjust their classroom, their material, and the very way they teach. Two is the healthcare. Our most important tool was the national municipal index built and developed by the spatial unit in the Prime Minister government offices. We could measure where the virus was spreading by city, neighborhoods, street, and zip code. Then we would deploy resources where needed. This saved life and prevented further infection. Three, it's Israeli Arab community. We had a big impact here. First, organizing a test center for them, then providing an Arabic hotline for a resident to call because a lot of information was not in Arabic, and especially with regards to Ramadan. Four is the National Lottery, Lotto in Israel. Is part of our organization. We are the homes of the National Lottery in Israel. The Federation is the homes of the National Lottery. We committed 200 million shekels toward the coronavirus recovery. 200 million shekels. Food, equipment, medicine, summer school, and hospitals. We were on the front lines with budget and logistic for all residents and all municipalities in Israel. 5 is psychological and emotional support. Do not underestimate how important this was, and it was implemented on a local, even personal level. The coronavirus hit the world at the same time, but in Israel, it comes at our most important and exciting time of year. The holidays of Purim, Passover, Holocaust Remembrance Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, and now in the summer vacation in Israel. Now, as we look toward the future, we should have acted differently. First, the Ministry of Health is not the right body to be leading the fight against coronavirus as the operator, only as the regulator. A pandemic is a national emergency. In fact, it is a global emergency. We need to do it together with the Israeli Defense Forces, the Home Front Command, the Federation of Local Authorities and Municipalities in Israel. We work together in emergency and routine time in Israel. We are the only ones capable of facing these challenges, and we have the manpower and the experience. We have to make a switch, and we do it now. The Federation of Local Authorities in Israel is very busy now to preparing for the start of school next September 1st. Kids need to be in school, and we will do it together. One of the benefits from this pandemic is our renewed partnership with the Diaspora Jewelry. We are united and helping each other face the challenges that are threatening all of us. Thank you very much. I would like to thank to Israel, to Michal, of course, to Zevik, Sarah, and other people, and of course to my mayors in Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chaim. And sitting here in New York and watching everything go on in Israel, I'm sure Governor Cuomo would be happy to have a federation of local authorities here to be able to coordinate between all the mayors in the United States. So our heart is really, really with you. I'd now like to welcome Lizzie Delauricha, the mayor of Ghane, Tikva. The stage is yours.
Good evening. Ghane Tikva is a city in the center of Israel with a population of 24,000 citizens. The social economic class is 8 out of 10, with a mix of 30% Orthodox and 70% non-Orthodox, coexisting in harmony. The population age is pretty young, on an average around 35 years old. Ghane Tikva's level of education is among the highest in Israel, including the new innovation schools, sports facilities, a local theater hall, and an art center. We believe in innovation and creativity and try to incorporate in every aspect possible. Ghane Tikva population is growing rapidly while keeping its local community environment. There's a vast community involvement in city project and a high volunteering awareness. For example, during the first wave, we had a huge number of volunteers assistants in local aid programs, in the distribution of food and to all needs, and assisting our senior citizens in whatever they may need during the lockdown. Our municipal staff exhibit a great willingness to help our community during this challenging time, and it gave them pride to be part of the same community and a sense of solidarity. This is my city, and this is also what I believe in as a person.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. And as Chaim mentioned before, a lot of the focus is also on the emotional aspect, the psychological aspect of the residents. I saw an article about a post that you had written offering your backyard as a wedding venue. We know that in Israel, everyone loves a big fat wedding, and so many Youngsters are very disappointed now, either having to cancel their wedding or limit it to 20 to 50 people. So I wanted to hear how that came about and why you thought that was the best way to contribute perhaps to the morale of the citizens.
So I feel responsible for the spirit of my citizens, and I believe that most mayors feel the same way. Our country and world is dealing with a major crisis that no one expected ever in the history. Naturally, it's bringing a lot of confusion and uncertainty. In Israel and in the Middle East in general, we are not used to social distancing. Most people are used to close relationships that are always warm with the needs of touch, talking close proximity to one another. Those social distancing is a great challenge, especially during isolation. I felt it is my duty as the mayor of Ghane Tikva to provide my citizens with a sense of assurance, both physically and morally. From my perspective, my staff and I made great efforts to lift the spirits of the community as much as possible, with many small or big gestures, while always in line with the COVID-19 restrictions. We also made sure to communicate all required information to our citizens via social media, billboard, SMS, WhatsApp message, etc. All this while still maintaining the daily routines and services during lockdown in the education sector, including additional new activities such as acquiring games for different communities with special needs, creating a live streaming portal for different communities, including webinar, lessons, functional training, storytelling, shows, and more. We even created a birthday patrol for kids and senior citizens that couldn't celebrate their birthday due to the period. So we arrived to their homes to celebrate under the window and call them to wish them a happy birthday and to make sure they do not feel alone or forgotten. We had a weekly drive-in music show, a truck that drives around the city with different popular musician bands playing great music with live singers to raise their spirits. On Fridays, we welcomed Shabbat online with songs and prayers from all times. Launch a new project called Book to Home, where we deliver books from the library to people via volunteers. A new project called Blessing Our Grandparents, where kids from all ages would are writing blessing for elderly. We opened the Senior Citizen Safe Zone Park, where only the elderly was allowed to enter and can walk around safely. We distributed food and food vouchers and pharmacy goods to hundreds of citizens. There's a lot more that I'd like to share, but it will take me much more long time. So to sum things up, we are here totally for our citizens, helping, listening, and trying to make our city a better place to live. And as to your questions regarding my own private garden, as part of understanding the residents' pain and to the restrictions of the wedding, I felt strong need to make something good and bring something else. That is why I offer to host wedding in my garden.
Thank you, Lizzie. Did anyone get married in your garden?
I'm waiting. In the beginning of August, it will be.
Amazing, amazing. So they'll be able to tell in their wedding to their grandchildren years ahead that they got married at the mayor's house. I would have loved to get married at Gracie Mansion. Unfortunately, the mayor of New York didn't offer that. Thank you so much, Lizzie. It's clear how dedicated you are. I'd also like to remind our audience and the mayors that we will have Q&A at the end, so please be patient. And also, we are being streamed live on Facebook, so you'll be able to share this with your friends once our broadcast is over. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Aliza Bloch, the mayor of Bet Shemesh. Aliza, the screen is yours.
Shalom and good evening from Bet Shemesh. Bet Shemesh is the 15th largest city in Israel and the fastest growing city in all of Israel, located in the center of the country. We are surrounded by rolling hills, nature valleys, and streams, one of the Israel's more beautiful areas. Bet Shemesh today is a home to 134,000 residents. Our city is easily the most diverse of its size. Ethiopian, French, Moroccans, Americans, and South Africa are more likely to move to Bet Shemesh than to nearly any other city in Israel. Bet Shemesh will be a city that will be an example of coexistence between ultra-Orthodox and secular, new immigrants and suburbs, and amongst of all other parts of Israeli society. I think that living together is strange. It comes from the ability to include and respect. I became familiar with this in Bet Shemesh, and I say it here as well. Bet Shemesh must be extreme in its moderation.
Aliza, thank you. Bet Shemesh has very much been on the map and a hotspot. I know that you're currently going through a partial lockdown. You mentioned the diverse community. So first of all, I'd like to know, how are you able to manage the different expectations come from the very different communities that you represent?
If I had to choose a single word which would describe the reaction of the municipality of Bet Shemesh to the outbreak of the coronavirus, then the word is complexity. Complexity was a general message. Complexity was in relation to our target residents. Complexity was the ability to continue the discourse that we started in Bet Shemesh. I want to share my thought on the particular level and level of what you may have read online or seen in the media. On the practical level, we worked outside the box of bureaucracy. We organized volunteers and established a medical headquarters with clear job definitions. The staff working there reflected all of the various communities in the city: Orthodox, modern religions, and secular. Among our target tasks, attention to individual residents, food baskets for the elderly, keeping contact with Holocaust survivors, giving out games and activities to children located down in closer neighborhoods, and more. Our medical center worked to expand the number of tests to took out all the corona patients to hotels. And the city continued to function. The operation managers worked with greater intensity than even before the outbreak. We collected the garbage, landscaping, the park maintenance continues. Throughout the city, cultural events were recognized to balconies. We broadcast ceremonies and even through live software and more.
But Aliza, I'd like,
yes.
Sorry for interrupting. I would like to understand that what are the things happening, what are the things that are happening right now? I know you've objected with a total lockdown, and that's something you're trying to prevent. Like you mentioned, you're trying to have as much of normalcy as possible so the residents can enjoy normal life. But I'm also reading about the frustrations of some residents of the Haredi community who say that the partial lockdown is maybe just cosmetic because there are still ways to get around. So what is happening right now and how do you see it moving forward? Oh, I think, sorry.
Yes,
there we are.
A lot of people want to make fire now between secular and Haredim and to say that all the problem is about the Haredim. But for me, it was very important to clarify that Haredim and secular are fighting together at the forefront of the corona outbreak. The dichotomy for me was between those residents who followed the rules and those who don't follow the rules. It would have been too as easy to drift into stigmas and generalization. The challenge was, and now, to create the significant social solidarity, which I had to clarify every day in the internal and national media. For me, it's an important point that I was very concerned with, was the accessibility of the information. As soon as we made decision, we did everything we could to get the information to the residents as quickly as possible, at the city level, at a neighborhood level, and even at the street level. I don't care who the audience was, Orthodox, religion, or secular. For me, it's to all the residents. For each resident, we linked a specific communication council, Facebook, a direct phone message, and add on the bulletin board, a voicemail message for mobile, a loudspeaker track, and even a drone with a loudspeaker, all in different language, Hebrew, English, Russian, Amharic, and Yiddish. The coronavirus highlighted our human mosaic of diversity.
And so looking at the numbers right now, and I promise this is the last question, do you still oppose a complete total lockdown?
I want to go out from it. I think that to be closed, it's not solve the problem. I think that we need to keep the distance between us and to say for everybody to do it. I think that to be in the closer, it's very bad, and it's make a bad moral for everybody, and makes the society very, very hate, and it's not good for us now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eliza Bloch, and thank you for joining us today and taking the time. I know you're very, very busy these days. All right, next I'd like to introduce Firas Badri, the mayor of Kfar Kara. Firas, the stage is handed over to you. Hello.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for this meeting. My name is Firas Badahi, mayor of Kfar Kara Council. Our friends, I want to speak in Hebrew for you, and near me sitting here, translator. I want to tell you about our village כפר קרע. כפר קרע יישוב שנמצא בין חיפה לתל אביב.
So there is a translator there, but I can also help. Would you like to say a few sentences and then have your translator, or would you like me to chime in? אתה רוצה שאני אתרגם?
הבנתי, no problem, you can translate. I'm not speaking the Hebrew, and you can translate. Okay.
I'll try.
You will try. Okay. כפר קרע יישוב ערבי מוסלמי הנמצא בין תל אביב לחיפה.
All right, so Kfar Kara is situated between Tel Aviv and Haifa. It's an Arab Muslim community.
והמקום שלו אסטרטגי, היות והוא נמצא בצמוד לכביש 6, הכביש המהיר של ישראל.
So it has a strategic location because it's located on Route 6. Anyone visited Israel and anyone in Israel knows this route. It connects the north and south of Israel.
ועל ציר תנועה מרכזי במדינת ישראל בין חדרה לעפולה.
It's the main route in Israel between Afula and Chedera.
היישוב מונה 20,000 תושבים ומתאפיין בשני דברים מרכזיים. הדבר הראשון, המיקום האסטרטגי שלו, והדבר השני, שיש בו מספר המשכילים הגבוה ביותר בתוך החברה הערבית.
You must be very proud. So two things characterize Kfar Kara. There are 20,000 residents, the strategic element that we already mentioned, and also the amount of educated people, the highest per capita or the highest percentage in all of Israel. Congratulations.
ובין המשכילים בעיקר 400 רופאים, 200 עורכי דין, באלפי בוגרי אוניברסיטאות, וזה הדבר המאפיין אותו ביותר מבין היישובים הערביים בישראל וגם במדינת ישראל.
So Kfar Kara has 400 doctors, which during the pandemic is of course very important. Many lawyers. I know you also are a lawyer by practice, and many people with a higher education, which they pride themselves in.
יחסית לכפרים הערביים, היישוב כפר קרע נחשב ליישוב מתפתח מהיפים שביישובים, ויש בו, אני רוצה לציין שני דברים ששונים מכל יישוב אחר. אצלנו יש בית ספר אחד שמכיל בית ספר שהוא ללימודים של תלמידים ערבים ויהודים אחד לצד השני.
One of the things that the mayor prides Kfar Kara in is that there is a school that's kind of a coexistent school with both Jewish and Arab students living together. He also said it's one of the most developed Arab communities in Israel. It's very beautiful from the exterior standpoint as well.
יש בו מרכז מחקר מו"פ מהמתקדמים שיש בארץ, שפועל בשיתוף פעולה עם אוניברסיטת תל אביב, וכמובן שיש לנו כל יתר המוסדות שנותנים שירותים כמו קופות חולים, בתי ספר, מתקני ספורט, עולמות ספורט, וכל המוסדות הרשמיים של המדינה.
Kfar Kara is very proud to have R&D Center for research and development, medical centers, and
מרכז מחקר and כל המוסדות הרשמיים, ככפר ערבי, יש בו את כל המוסדות הרשמיים של המדינה, כמו קופות חולים, בתי ספר, מגרשים, מתקני ספורט וכדומה.
They have medical centers, schools, anything you would find in any of the major communities and cities in Israel, you will find in Kfar Kara. They're able to give their citizens everything that the country has to offer.
רוב התושבים של כפר קרע הם מתפרנסים מעבודה של פקידים במשרדי ממשלה או מעבודות מסחר, כל מיני נגיד סוגי מסחר שונים שמתפרנסים מהם, אבל העיקר הם פקידים בתוך משרדי ממשלה או במוסדות המדינה.
Kfar Kara has a large percentage of the workforce that are in the public sector, and work for the government.
זהו, זה היישוב בכפר קרע, והוא יישוב מאוד בולט מבין היישובים הערביים, ונמצא באזור ואדי ערה, ונשמח לארח אתכם אצלנו.
So this is Kfar Kara. This is what it's characterized by. It's located in Wadi Ara. Everyone is welcome to come visit. It's a very friendly place. Maybe if we can talk a little bit about COVID-19 and your response as a mayor during this time. You have 400 professionals, doctors, who I'm sure have been working nonstop. How has this affected the community?
קודם כל, אני ציינתי שמה שמאפיין היישוב כפר קרע שיש בו קרוב ל-400 רופאים. הרופאים שלנו עומדים בחזית למלחמה בהתפשטות נגיף הקורונה, והם עושים עבודת קודש בבתי חולים, בקופות חולים, ואני גאה על העבודה ועל התרומה שלהם למדינה ולקהילה.
So as you mentioned earlier, there are close to 400 doctors who've been working, providing support and being part of the COVID-19 workforce, and they've been working all over the country during this pandemic.
לצערי, בימים אלה מספר הנגועים בווירוס הקורונה עולה ועולה ביישוב שלנו, ואנחנו מתמודדים עם משבר לא קל כדי למנוע התפשטות הנגיף אצלנו ביישוב.
These days, you're facing growing numbers of COVID-19 cases, which has been very challenging, and you're trying to stop the spread and stop these numbers for climbing any further.
בשל המסורת שלנו, שאנחנו עושים חתונות, ולאחר שסגרו את אולמות האירועים, בעיית ההתפשטות בעיקר נגרמה בגלל החתונות, בגלל בתי ניחום אבלים, וגם בגלל שחלק מהעובדים שלנו שעובדים מחוץ ליישוב העבירו את הנגיף אצלנו ליישוב, וכיום יש יותר מ-120 נפגעים בנגיף ו-500 אנשים הנמצאים בבידוד.
So due to the tradition of the place and the social makeup, and because like in all of Israel, weddings are very popular, large weddings are very popular, they've also been a source of spreading COVID, unfortunately. Funerals have posed the same challenge. And so after several weddings were held, the numbers seemed to continue to rise as coronavirus spread. And at the moment, you have 120 cases of COVID-19 and 500 people who have to be self-quarantined or in lockdown.
כראש רשות וכדי לשמור על בריאות הציבור, החלטתי לסגור את כל המוסדות הרשמיים אצלי ביישוב, כמו למשל מתקני הספורט, האולמות, את כל הפעילות של הקיץ, של מחנות קיץ, ודיברתי עם האימאמים כדי שיסייעו לנו גם בעניין ההסברה לתושבים, כדי שכולם נקפיד למילוי הוראות משרד הבריאות, ושנוכל להשתלט ולמנוע התפשטות המחלה אצלנו ביישוב.
So in the past, I'm guessing few days or a few weeks, you've implemented new restrictions. You've closed a lot of public places, sports arenas, summer camps for children, a very tough decision to make. You're working in coordination with the local imams in order to pass the information on to the residents so they can act safely, practice social distancing, do whatever it is that's required from the health advisory, and you're hoping to stop the spread.
אנחנו עובדים עם הרופאים הנפלאים שלנו ויוצאים למסע הסברה רחב היקף ביישוב, וגם משתפים רוב האנשים שבאים להתנדב כדי לעזור לנו, לתמוך ולעזור למשפחות הנזקקות אצלנו ביישוב, ומקווה מאוד שהמשבר הזה יחלוף ונחזור לשגרת חיים אצלנו ביישוב.
Thank you. So like everyone, you're hoping that this crisis, this pandemic can soon be behind us. There are a lot of volunteers who have come to Kfar Kara to help, also help with families in need. And so from all of us, we also, we're watching you from New York, and אנחנו מסתכלים עליכם מניו יורק, and we're hoping that we see the numbers go down and that it declines. And of course, recognize Kfar Kara for the immense help and for the doctors that you have that have treated and continue to treat so many patients. So,
thank you very
Mayor,
much, and I hope. Thank you very much, and I hope. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in our village. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I actually will take that as an official invitation, and you are all witnesses. I will definitely be coming to the village. Thank you so much. after COVID, of course, and once the 2-week quarantine is over. Thank you. All right, now I'd like to introduce our next mayor, Tzvika Brot. He's the mayor of Bat Yam. Mayor Brot, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Michal, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for having us, and thank you, Israel Maimon, my friend, for all of your hard and great work for the state of Israel. Well, I took office a year and a half ago, and this is my first term as mayor. And before that, I was a senior journalist in the IDF radio and Yediot Haronot newspaper. I served as the political correspondent of the newspaper, which is the biggest in Israel. And at some point, when I got tired by trashing politicians, I decided to become one of them. So now I'm the youngest mayor ever in Bat Yam. And I took office when I was 38, and I can assure you, and I'm completely objective here, that Bat Yam is one of the greatest cities in Israel, and not because everything is wonderful in it, because it's sometimes the other way around. We are one of the older cities in Israel, We have the higher percentage of older people in the country, twice as much from the national average. We have a huge percentage of children and people with special needs, twice as much from the national average of single moms. We have 38% of newcomers, Olim Chadashim, that made Aliyah to Bat Yam, mostly from Russia. So now take all the data that they gave you and try to think, how can you even start to manage a world-class mega crisis like coronavirus in my city? So the first thing that we did, because we like challenges, is to start back then in February, even before the coronavirus hits Israel, is to see what my colleagues in China and South Korea and other countries in the East did. And we decided to open a situation room right next to my office in order to, first of all, buy all the products that we need, that we never had in our offices, like face masks and all the liquid alcohol to sanitize and that we can find. And we wrote a plan how to send most of our employees home to work from home, but mostly how to support the senior citizens and the people which have special needs in Bat Yam. One of the highly unique projects that we did is to open a special call center that we contact them, the people with special needs, and the others, we didn't wait for them to call us. And we did, like, I think it was around 20,000 calls in a period of a month and a half, 6 weeks. And it was amazing, even before the lockdown, to make sure that they are knowing that there's someone there with them, at least in our heart. And we are only a phone call away from getting help if they will need that, with maybe food or medicine. So at the first few weeks of coronavirus in Israel, we took a hit, a big one, and we lost around 15 people. Now, it might not sound a lot when we are talking about so many people that died, but back then, at that point, it was 10% of all the deaths from coronavirus in Israel, when Bat Yam is only 2% of the general population. So I decided that I don't have time to wait to the government. We still didn't have a national lockdown back then, but I decided to do one in Bat Yam. I decided not to allow people to crowd more than 50 people, when nationally it was allowed around 1,000. And then I decided for the first time to shut down all the synagogues. Now, you have to understand that it was quite a shock, because we have something like 130 synagogues in Bat Yam, but it works. 2 weeks after, the number of people in Bat Yam that was infected was dropped from, I think it was 40 to 50 people per day to around 7 or 8. So I think 3 weeks after, when the government decided on a national lockdown and closed all the synagogue, we shown a fantastic numbers relatively, and that lasts for a few months until the second wave around. And a few weeks ago, when the second outbreak began, I saw the numbers climbing again, and I decided again not to wait to the government. And I understand that one of our problem will be the beach. Bat Yam is a beach town. We have a great beach. And I knew that every weekend we have tens of thousands of people on the beach together, of course, without any mask, face mask, only swimming suits. So I declared that I am going to copy the American model from California. I learned the model that they are doing there. And for a week, I closed the beach, not for all day, only for part of the day. But, you know, not everybody liked it, but I think less than 10 days after, again, the numbers started to drop, and we saw that we are on a stable ground again. I think that my conclusion from what the experience that we still having now is that the government is doing a lot of good, and we need them to be strong, of course, but at the end, there's a huge gap that we have to close. And the only way I think to close it professionally is by strong local leadership, like the one that my colleague in Israel and myself shown, leading by Chaim Bibas, my good friend. I truly believe that this leadership, at least in the coronavirus story in Israel, the leadership that Chaim shown us and for the people in Israel and all of the mayors around him, together with our colleagues, will be learned in the future in any crisis management school, not just in Israel, but maybe worldwide.
Thanks, Tzvika. And the local authorities, I think all over the world, have really taken center stage, and their work has been highlighted during this pandemic. So I agree with you 100%. And as a resident, definitely, we're looking at our mayors, we're looking at our governors here. And in Israel, I know many people are first going to the mayors. You're in the midst of a second wave. You said you believe in partial restrictions, but I think with Israelis, the biggest challenge is to get them to abide. How are you getting people to actually wear those masks and practice social distancing, which is completely against our DNA?
Right. So you're right. The main problem is that people have a very short memory. I think after we finished the first outbreak, it took us a lot of efforts and many fines that our city police was heading people just to remind them that it's not over yet. And unfortunately, only after the numbers a few weeks ago started to was climbing again, people woke up and remembered that they should go with mask face and to keep the rules. So I think that my decision, it's interesting, I only thought about it a few days ago. My decision to close our beach for the first time ever was not because I wanted people to keep people out of each other, which was important, but mostly because I wanted to shock the people here in Bat Yam. And it worked, it helped, because many people criticized me to keep them away from the beach, even if it was only for a phase, but it took them less than a week to understand that was the right decision. And I think from that point, everybody now remembered to keep the rules, and the number are dropping. And now even people are asking me on the social media to close the beach again. So I really hope that we are not facing a full lockdown again, but I do know that now my people are ready for it and the city is ready for it if the government will decide that it's necessary.
All right, thank you. And for those who don't know, most of you I'm guessing do, Bat Yam, the word yam means sea. And so closing the sea in Bat Yam is really, you know, it's almost contradictory. So it's interesting that people actually have contacted you to close the beach. So right now, are the beaches open?
Yes, it is. You can come if you like, but you're still gonna have to stay at home for 14 days. So I recommend you stay in New York for now, but next time you're in Israel, you should come and see our beach.
Thank you, Tzvika. I will do so. Definitely waiting for that 2-week self-quarantine to be over, and then I will be the first one on the plane. I can promise you that. All right, we are moving now to the second part of our program. We're going to have Q&A from the audience. And the first question is from Israel Bonds Houston Chair Jeremy Sorkin. Jeremy, what is your question and who would you like to direct it to?
Hi, thank you, Michal, and thank you to all the mayors on today's call. I'd like to ask Mayor Block how she's preparing for Beit Shemesh's post-pandemic, and what will her first steps be for a return to normalcy? And I trust that a lot of people will be taking notes.
And if you can just ask one more time, repeat it so everyone can hear.
Sure, the question was for Mayor Block. Post-pandemic, what will be her first steps for a return to normalcy?
I'll start with the challenge. I start with the challenges. The biggest challenge for me now is the economic issue. The crisis has created a situation where many businesses that have closed and many workplaces have sent workers home. Our social resilience depends heavily on the economic security of the residents, and we must work daily not to increase the amount of people in need, but to strengthen them, enable them to be independent and not be on welfare support. I would like to share my conclusions these days. We are once again facing an increase in the number of patients. It's important that we learn to take advantage of periods of crisis. The best example is Zoom. We continue to communicate. We were able to promote more tasks and complex meetings became easy, like now, to implement. And we did not stop running a city for a moment. The coronavirus became a part of the management committee and sat together with the city management. We managed to open the school year one way or other, even if the coronavirus is still present. My major conclusion is that we must continue to empower local government and involve local governments as part of the decision process of the central government. At the end of the day, it's a head of local authority who runs the day-to-day process and directly connected to residents. There is no doubt that every crisis is an opportunity for creativity and strength. I was proud to see the growth of our organization during these trying days.
Thank you so much, Elisa Bloch. We have another question. This one is from our New York Women's Division Council member, Hillary Riegelman. Hillary, what is your question and who is it directed to?
Thanks, Michal. My question is for Mayor Broth. Hi, Mr. Mayor. When the pandemic first hit Israel, you mentioned you were among the first mayors to make the tough decision to close synagogues for 30 days. So how did you arrive at this decision? And how did you manage to keep the community engaged during the holidays without synagogues?
Thank you for the question, Hillary. Well, you know, Bat Yam is quite a large city. The population is 160,000. Well, in Israeli proportion, it's quite large. And we have more than 130 synagogues. Third of our population goes to synagogue, at least during Shabbat. I myself goes to shul. So I knew that my decision will have a national impact. So I slept, or maybe didn't sleep, for 2 nights before I took this decision, and I took it by myself with all the responsibility. But I did spoke with the chief rabbi and asked him to endorse my decision, and he did. That actually quite surprised me, but he did. And I explained to the public that Chazal told us in the Gemara, Chamira Sakanta Misura, which means when people life are in stakes, nothing else is matter. So it's much more important than any mitzvah that you want to do or to go and pray in shul. And I agree that most of the people agreed then, not everyone. I think maybe a week after everybody knew that this is the right decision. And now we do know that this decision saved life, and I'm really proud of it.
Thank you, Tzvika. And finally, we have our last question from the audience. Thanks to everyone who's stayed with us thus far. It's from Steve Tarab. He's a member of the Los Angeles Advisory Council. He's also the co-chair of the Platinum Young Professionals Society. Stage is yours.
Thanks. Hi. My question is for Chaim Bibas. Hi, Chaim. I have a two-part question, and they're both connected. Firstly, what steps have the Israeli municipalities been taking to create a return to normalcy? And also, I wanted to ask your views on the relationship between the Israeli municipalities and the Jewish communities abroad.
So, thank you about your question. I'm hopeful that the worst is behind us. Only time will tell. We are wiser now, and we have been through the stress and difficulty. We have to learn lessons moving forward. For us at the Federation of Local Authorities, we are moving to working 1 day a week from home, and helping schools also move to 1 or 2 days a week of distance learning. This is the better for families, better for quality of life, and we will see the impact about all the things how we can add to routine. About your second question, I would like to say a word about our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. There is also a feeling of unity among Israelis and Jews in the diaspora. We are working together and exporting our knowledge, experience, and technology to them. There is a long-term project that I'm heading for the Federation of Local Authorities together with the several national and international organizations. We did it with the Jewish agency, with a lot of representatives from United States and Europe, West Europe. We go by the principle of Kol Israel Arevim Ze Leze. All Jews are responsible for each other. We see this now more than ever. We are working together on challenges that we both face. This started with the coronavirus, but it is now moving to another serious threat. There is a sharp rise in anti-Semitism in the United States and of violence in general, and directed toward the Jewish community. We talked with the Jewish community. We talked with the sister city in a few cities in the United States of America. For example, I have a partnership with Rochester in upstate New York. I heard about all these things. I'm hearing from many people that they are living in a fear. We are here to help you facing this serious threat. Together, I do believe, together we are united and we are stronger. Now, we are forced to unite our effort in order to face serious challenges. Strengthening the bond between diaspora, Jews, and Israelis will make us stronger for the future. I look forward to continuing our joint effort, and thanks the Israel bonds for providing this important platform for exchanges ideas. I would like to thank to the president, to the chairman, Mr. Israel Maimon, to Mr. Zavik Rubinstein, to Ms. Sarah, of course, to Ms. Michal Divon. And I do believe we can do it together. We can take from Israel. We have a lot of technological company in municipalities, and of course, we work together with the companies, with the IT company in Israel, and we would like to bring all the technology to make together all these things together with the Jewish community in the United States, in Europe, in all the Jewish community all over the world. So thank you very much, and I do believe if we are unite together, we can win all the things in Israel. we are regular, you know, to the enemy, missiles from Gaza Strip, from Lebanon, from Syria. Now all the people in the world fight against the enemy, and the enemy is the coronavirus. And we would like to make it together, but we do it first of all with the Jewish community, with the Jewish people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chaim, and definitely the Jewish community, the Israel Bonds, the supporters of Israel Bonds are all looking at Israel during this time, looking to see how it is we can help and how we can contribute. I'd like to thank all of the mayors for joining us today, Chaim Bibas, Aliza Bloch, Tzvika Brot, Firas Badchi, and Lizzie Delauricha, who had to leave early. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to all the supporters of Israel Bonds. We hope that everyone stays safe and that we can very soon speak about this pandemic as a thing of the past, but right now everyone is still very much in the midst of it, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I'd like to now hand it over to Lee Wagner, the Israel Bonds National Director of Business Development. Lee.
Hi, everyone. This concludes our program. To all of you who joined us today, thank you for your ongoing support in Israel Bonds. Our next global event will be on Sunday, July 26th at 2:30 p.m. New York time with Tal Brody, Maccabi Tel Aviv's 1977 team's captain, and the amazing story of their European championship on the map. Please also mark your calendar for August 18 at 2:30 p.m. with our special High Holidays event featuring some special guests. Stay tuned, more information will follow. Until then, stay safe and healthy. Thank you.